Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Monday. I hope the start of your week is going well, wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. The final few days of the international break lie ahead of us, and then all eyes are on Saturday and a return to Premier League action. Arsenal at home to Nottingham Forest, of course, looking for a first league win in 5 games. Very, very much need the 3 points on Saturday against a Forest side who have started the season very well, of course, although they did lose to Newcastle at home just before the international break. Mikel Arteta is going to be speaking. They haven't been notified yet about when the press conference is this week. I presume it will be on Friday, probably at 1:30, but still waiting for the final confirmation from Arsenal on that. And there'll be plenty for Arteta to speak about in that press conference. Injuries, as always, this season will be a big, big theme of that presser. Another one last night, Leandro Trossard. We're going to talk about that in today's show. A little bit more about the sporting director search, another big name linked with potential interest from Arsenal to replace Edu. Got questions and comments from you. Lots of reaction to the Emirates expansion story we were talking about yesterday as well. So lots to discuss, but we're going to start on Leandro Trossard. If you haven't seen it yet, he got injured yesterday playing for Belgium against Israel. Now, we're not sure yet the extent of the injury. It seems, fingers crossed at this stage, the early sort of word coming out of Belgium is that it appears to be more of a impact injury rather than a muscle injury. And he did walk off. He looked okay as he went off, but the fact he went off before half-time, obviously something wasn't right. But it does look at this early stage that it was an impact rather than a muscle, which hopefully will mean it's nothing too serious. Now, I like to say that social media doesn't surprise me these days, but I have to say some of the reaction that I've seen to this injury, just I don't know the right word to describe this. It's sad, really. It just makes me sad, genuinely sad, seeing some of the reactions to this. Some people seem to be happy that Trossard has got injured. It just blows my mind, honestly. I mean, how, as an Arsenal fan, can you be happy that one of your players has got injured? I mean, this is how many goals did Trossard score for Arsenal last season? Big goals at big time. He scored about 17, 18 goals last season. Yes, he's in a poor run of form at the moment. He's struggling for confidence. He's struggling for form. It was only a couple of months ago he came off the bench, scored against Aston Villa at the start of the season, and everyone was demanding that he was starting every single game. And now suddenly you've got fans, and I know I shouldn't let social media bother me as much as it does. But I was just looking through some of the, because I was obviously searching on like Trossard injury, searching on social to see if I could find out the latest news from Belgium in terms of what it was. And when you do that, you see people obviously that you don't follow, but you see their tweets coming up. And I was just reading through them, and I was just like, are these really Arsenal fans saying some of this stuff? I just don't get it. He's a good player, Trossard. He's absolutely crucial player to this squad, to this season. Yes, he's in a poor run of form, but all it takes is that to get him back in form again, and he can go on another burst and end up scoring between 15 and 20 goals like he did for Arsenal last season when he was absolutely vital to this team. You know, he can play left, he can play centrally, he can play right, he can play up front. He's crucial to this team, and he's in a bad run of form. So what? It happens. Everyone has bad run of form. You get out of it, and then you start contributing again. To see some of the stuff I've seen in the last few days, it's why I haven't left Twitter. You know, I'm still on it, but I'm using it far, far less. I've moved over to Blue Sky, which I'm really enjoying it, and I'm well aware that I imagine as Blue Sky continues to grow and it gets bigger and more people move over there, then you're going to get the same problems on Blue Sky than you do on Twitter. Same idiots posting the same rubbish that you have to sit through, but you know, at the moment, it's much more enjoyable experience, and I'm hoping it stays that way. I'm not going to, for now, close my Twitter down. Obviously, I've got a lot of followers on there. I know who, want to hear what I've got to say, and certainly during matches and stuff like that, want to see the live reporting that I do from games. So I'm not going to shut it down just yet, but I'm certainly going to be using Blue Sky more than I am Twitter now, because Twitter just makes me sad. It really does. It's just a horrible place to be at times. And I thought definitely in the aftermath of Trossard's injury yesterday. Imagine him. And I know he makes loads and loads of money. And so, and people will use that argument, which frankly, I just think is rubbish, because it doesn't matter how much money you earn, you don't deserve to get dog's load of abuse. Imagine he's sitting at home last night, feeling sorry for himself that he's got this injury, he could miss some games, and he has a quick look on social, which I hope he doesn't do. And that footballers, I would expect now that they don't do that, because they know what they're going to find. and he sees his own fans, his own team's fans, some of them, not all of them, of course. It's only the very, very small minority who do it, but seemingly celebrating an injury. What must he think? Can he be bothered then to turn up and perform for these fans at the weekend when he's seen some of them celebrating an injury? I just don't get it. I just genuinely don't understand it. And so, yeah, but look, fingers crossed anyway, it's not a bad one. And the word coming out of Belgium is that it's not too bad right now and that he should hopefully be okay. Fingers crossed that is the case. Okay, moving on now, just to what else happened last night. Saliba obviously in action for France. Good win for them against Italy. 3-1 they won. A picture of a very happy William Saliba, as you can see also on the screen if you're watching us on YouTube. Loves the celebrations, old big Willie, doesn't he? In terms of action tonight, we've got Poland. So Jakub Kiwior, Poland got hammered last time out, didn't they? 5-1, so they're going to want a better performance. I can't imagine the Scots are going to score 5 goals against Poland, I have to say, tonight. So Kiwior in action there, and then you've got Spain in action against Switzerland as David Raya, Mikel Merino. Then they'll be heading home tomorrow. Then we've got a couple more days to get through after that. Timber and Havertz and Zinchenko potentially in action on Tuesday, and then overnight, Gabriel Martinelli in action for Brazil, and Gabriel Magalhaes as well, of course, against Uruguay. Then everyone will hop back on the plane. The 2 Brazilians will come back on a plane, as they always do with private jets. Some of the other Brazilian players based in London will probably come with them. They'll go back to the training ground, and then all eyes will be on Saturday and that big, big game against Nottingham Forest as Arsenal look to get what, as I said yesterday, is just a crucial run now we've got coming up after this international break finishes through till Christmas. We've got, I think, 7 fixtures in the Premier League before Christmas that are entirely winnable for Arsenal. Obviously difficult because they're still Premier League games, but they are winnable for Arsenal. This is the crunch time of the season because it's been a difficult start. The performances haven't been great. The results haven't been great. They've got a big gap to try and make up on Liverpool. But I do think if they can get maximum points, which has to be the target between now and Christmas, that gap going into the new year will not be 9 points. I'm sure Liverpool are going to drop points in this run of games that they've got coming up. So if Arsenal can take maximum points from these games, put the pressure on, I'm sure they'll be going into New Year probably maximum 5 points behind Liverpool, and at that stage of the season with half a season still to go, that is a gap that is entirely get the words out properly, retrievable. So that has to be the aim. Absolutely crucial run of games coming through, but we've got a few more games to get through now in terms of the internationals before we can really start to focus on that. Okay, in terms of the sporting director, Sky Sports now reporting interest in Luis Campos, obviously at PSG at the moment. His contract in Paris is up at the end of the season, hasn't yet renewed, and Sky are reporting that he is one of the targets that Arsenal are going to be looking to speak to replace Edu, which would be no real surprise. Luis Campos, obviously a fantastic operator, hugely respected across Europe for the job that he's done at places like Monaco, of course, and then PSG when he went there. Has a very, very strong contacts book, has a good record of signing young players. He's doing that with PSG now, of course. Not technically the sporting director at PSG, is he? I can't remember his role, his job title there. He's not sporting director, though, is it? I can't remember what it is. But yeah, he was actually close to going to Arsenal at one point. There was very, very strong interest before Edu arrived when the Monchi stuff was happening as well, that Luis Campos was a target for Arsenal. It never happened, nor did Monchi, and Edu obviously ended up joining. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if he is on the list. You've got to say, if you're putting together a short list of people you want to speak to, then he would absolutely be there, given his the experience he has and the contacts that he has around the world. So we'll wait and see on that. But as I've said when I've spoken about other names who have been linked to the role, that this is still at the very start of the process for Arsenal, and there is no major rush on it, and they want to make sure they get the right person. So there'll be shortlist being compiled. As I said, they're expecting to use a recruitment company to do this first initial stage of the process as well, and then they'll get stuck into it after that. So we're still at the very early stages of the process, and you'll see names like Campos being linked left, right, and centre, I'm sure. But I think we're still some way off before sort of getting down to the final sort of names on that shortlist. Right, moving on to some questions and comments now before we wrap this one up to start the week. This is a lot of reaction to the expansion plans that we were talking about yesterday, where Arsenal potentially looking to increase the size of the Emirates until 80,000. But as I said yesterday, we're still at an extremely early stage when it comes to that. Nothing even remotely imminent. It's just looking at what possibilities there might be to expand on the stadium. That's as far as they are. But lots of reactions to the story. ZSHT says 4 FA Cups and 2 league runners-up from 15 years of underspending to pay off the last build. I'm all for an 80,000 Wanda Stadium as long as it doesn't restrict us on the pitch. I think a lot of people will go along with that. Kvar Records here talks about staging expansion. He says, I can suspect this becoming another local cause, a bit like the Heathrow expansion. I think it needs to happen, if I'm being fair, for the Arsenal to continue to grow. But it took a monumental level of good grace from everyone to get the Ashburton Grove project going, with a lot of politics for an area that was just brownfield. Planning is always a nightmare, as you noted, and the area is so much more residential now. There's huge bottlenecks already outside the stadium due to the rail and Gillespie Park conservation area. Expanding underground makes more sense, and I think we are talking SoFi levels of construction projects. All the other clubs that expanded are in the areas that have so much less restrictions around them. Ultimately, it will happen, but I'm thinking another decade away. I tell you what, it's a really good comment, and I think you're pretty much spot on there. As I said, we are at such an early stage for this. And even if it gets to a stage where they decide on a possible project and they're like, this is the one we're going to try and go for, then that is just the very, very start of it, because there's so many hoops they're going to have to jump through. As you said, getting Ashburton Grove off the ground was such a difficult thing. They managed to do it, but they had to agree to so many, to stick to so many sort of restrictions from the council and things like that to get it over the line. If it were to happen in the future, it's such a long way off. It really is, I think. Peter says, Arsenal need a bigger stadium. If the council and local residences don't like it, let them move to another area. I couldn't disagree more there, Peter. No way move to another area. As Kvar Records above there says, it took so much to get Ashburton Grove just round the corner from Highbury. It was so important that they did that. If there was talk of Arsenal going to King's Cross, that was never actually going to happen, but it was Wembley talk, all that sort of stuff. A place outside the M25, it would have been absolutely horrific had that happened. We're still in the same sort of area. You can still go to the same pre-match places that you could go to when you're at Highbury. The Emirates area is just brilliant that the club have managed to get that place and get it off the ground. Thought of actually leaving and going to another area, I couldn't disagree more. It'd be terrible. I would stay at the Emirates all day long rather than go somewhere else. Stay at 60,000 Emirates all day long rather than go somewhere else and end up on the outskirts of town in some soulless place. No. Have to stay in the area that they're in. It's either expand on the Emirates or don't do anything, in my view. And Sensai says, what does the possible expansion do to Arsenal's ability to spend in the upcoming windows? The move to the Emirates was quite costly. Just want to make sure this isn't going to impact reinforcement at the forward line midfield. Absolutely not. As I said, we're still so far off. It's going to do nothing in terms of restricting spending in upcoming windows because it's so far down the line, and this was still at such an early stage. So no, you don't have to worry about what it would do to Arsenal's chances of signing a striker in the summer. It is not going to have an impact at all. This is reaction to the RVP stuff we were talking about yesterday, with RVP saying that he thinks the door is closed to coming back to Arsenal one day as a coach, which of course it absolutely is. And he was talking about how Arsenal fans are still sensitive about him leaving, unsurprisingly. Here's some of the reaction to what you guys have been saying. The last red coat says, when RVP stood up and called out Nasri for leaving the way he did, saying he was greedy, underhanded, and that anything he won there would mean nothing, he was one of us. I really admired him for that. I refused to believe he was leaving until it was official, not out of denial or wishful thinking, but out of respect for the moral character he had displayed in the past. Exposed as a hypocrite, I lost all respect for him as a man. Robert says, the day RVP joins Arsenal, even in a capacity as a cleaner, that will be the day I will suspend my support until he leaves. Nonsense. But Sono down there has a different opinion, says, I would actually welcome RVP back to Arsenal, because let's be honest, his assessment of the situation was what eventually happened. We never spent the money required to win the league, and we've not won the league since he left. Which, look, as the RVP situation, when he left, you cannot fault him in terms of how that choice worked out for him from a football point of view. He went to United, he won a trophy, he won the title, he got his medal. So he can be quite happy with his decision from a football point of view. which is fine. And I'm sure he probably is quite happy with it from a football point of view, because he's got his medal that you can always look back on now, that he won a league title with Manchester United. But the fact is that decision means now that he can't come back to Arsenal. Because I know that you said that you'd welcome him back, but I tell you what, the vast majority wouldn't, and I certainly wouldn't. And you sort of live and die by your decisions, don't you? So on one hand, his footballing wise, it was the correct decision, and he was right. He wasn't going to win something at Arsenal. I think that was pretty obvious at the time. Although we'll never know. It's all hypothetical. Who knows what could have happened if he'd have stayed and had that and repeated what he did for United at Arsenal that season? Maybe they could have gone on and won a trophy. You don't know. But the way he left just still leaves such a bitter taste in my mouth, and it always will, and I'll never forget it. I just felt like Wenger deserved more from him. He stood by him through so much. Yeah, the last 2 years at Van Persie, when he was available, when he was unbelievable, when he was great, fair play. But all those years before that, all those injuries, the time Wenger just stood by him time and time again, gave him new contracts despite the injuries, continued to believe in him, and gave him the captaincy. And then after a couple of good seasons, were excellent seasons, there was no loyalty there whatsoever. It was just, I'm going. The way he publicly announced he wasn't going to sign a new contract, which basically forced Arsenal's hand to sell him, just wasn't right by me. Didn't sit right. And as a fan at the time, I was so upset with it. And as a fan now, still, obviously, I wouldn't be welcoming him back in a coaching capacity. And like he said, it's not going to happen. He knows it as well. And I'm sure he's probably not overly bothered about it, to be fair. So it doesn't really matter. One from Jelly Belly before we wrap this one up. He says, actually, I've got a couple more thinking about it. He said, you mentioned that you expect us to do, as most of us, that Sterling goes back to Chelsea at the end of the season, that we sign a new winger. You've also said things that Partey will leave on a free in the summer, which I agree with, meaning we desperately need a world-class six as a replacement. Arsenal clearly need a top striker as well. Then there's goalkeeping situation in the number 2 department. To recap, that's a world-class striker, world-class winger, world-class six, and a top keeper as number 2. That cannot be feasible in one summer window, can it? I think Arsenal made a huge mistake last summer not getting a striker in. We know they wanted Sesko. We know they had money to spend on Williams. Feels like they left it all to do in one window now. Yeah, but the thing is, they wanted Sesko and they wanted Williams, but they couldn't get them. And so obviously you can point to the fact that maybe they should have gone and signed someone else then. But I suppose if the players you really want aren't available, then do you want to then spend that money on someone you don't really want? I'm not sure. But the thing is, when you say a world-class striker, a world-class winger, world-class six, what do you define as world-class? That they need a striker, they need a winger, and they need a six. But who's to say what's world-class and what's not? It doesn't, just because they need those players doesn't mean you have to spend 100 million on those players. You can sign players that you still believe can be world-class or are absolute top quality for 50, 40, 50 million pounds, and they can still be absolute superstars. Look at how much Jurriën Timber cost, for example. And he's a fantastic defender who absolutely improves Arsenal and improves Arsenal's squad. So I don't necessarily think it's impossible that you can sign those players in the same window. I don't think Zubimendi is going to cost you £100 million if you end up signing Zubimendi when you talk about your world-class six. Well, he's not going to cost you £100 million. It's simple. Again, if you sign Nico Williams, he's not going to cost you that much money. He's got a release clause. Yes, you have to pay big wages, but he's got a release clause. Sesko won't cost you £100 million. So I think it's entirely feasible you can sign those players in one window. And I think Arsenal have got plenty of money to spend this coming summer because they didn't spend all of what they wanted to spend last summer because the players weren't available. So I don't think it's not feasible in one summer window, I have to say. And just quickly, Aaron asked about Tomiyasu's future. Says he wants my opinion on it. My opinion on it, I think Tommy's got, I was happy Tomi signed his new contract. I thought it was a good deal at the time. I don't think he was put on too much money. It wasn't a long-term deal either because of the injuries, and Arsenal wanted to take a look at it. I think this season is going to really frustrate, or the start of the season so far is going to have really frustrated Arteta for Tomiyasu. And it wouldn't surprise me if an offer came in for him in the summer from somewhere that Arsenal might look to accept it. I think he's a really top player. I think he provides really good flexibility in terms of the squad and the positions that he can play in. But if he's not available, then, kind of what's the point? And this season has been a frustrating start. There's still lots of the season to go. He could still come in and play a huge part this season, stay fit, and it would be fantastic. We'll have to wait and see. But I think if these injury issues continue throughout the season, then I think Mikel Arteta's patience is going to wear very, very thin, and understandably so. So it might well be that the summer Arsenal look to do something and bring in someone who is going to be more available. But hopefully not. Hopefully he can come back and can stay fit, prove that he can stay fit, because when he is fit, what a player he is and what a huge asset he is to the squad. And that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. As always, I really do appreciate it. I hope your week has started well, wherever you're watching this, listening to this around the world. I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Anything you want me to discuss in that show, get into the comments below. Let me know. I'll pull some of them together and get them included tomorrow. Until then, have a great day, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.